Gary and Sarah, I've been praying for you since 2 o'clock this morning. Those words echo in my head often, and I think about the day that we were called to a meeting at my son's school, Craig. The teacher called us in, and we walked into the office, and how that meeting changed our lives. I had said to Sarah on the way to the meeting that I didn't need another meeting where they're going to tell us to change medicines, to increase dosages, that Craig's not concentrating, and what a journey it's been. Sarah and I had two beautiful children, Jason and Craig, and soon after Jason was born, we realized that it wasn't going to be exactly the same as it was with Jason. Craig had many anxious times, and from the extent where he wouldn't even go and play in the garden by himself. He didn't want to go to sleep at friends' houses. Effectively, separation anxiety was a real problem for Craig. It got a lot worse when we had to send him off to preschool when Sarah went back to work, and to the extent where Craig hated leaving his mom and dad. It became very difficult for Sarah and I, and leaving your child screaming at places spoiled your whole day. Things got worse and worse as Craig ended up going to junior primary, where I needed to phone the school on the way to school to say we were coming and that could they please meet us at the gate, and they used to pull Craig off me screaming. We soon realized that it wasn't just a normal thing, and after many psychologist appointments and time with doctors, they realized that Craig had an obsessive compulsive disorder which was causing major anxieties in him. On top of that, he had attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity disorder, which was really making things worse. This meeting with Craig's teacher was just unbelievable. There we were thinking about medicines and so on and so forth, and to have Craig's teacher say, "Gary, you're head of this family. You need to take control of this." She told us that she had this vision of the enemy driving a wedge into our family. She asked us if we were going to church, and the funny thing at the time is a really good friend of mine was about to plant a church, and I had promised him that once he planted his church that I would visit. So it was a really good opportunity for me to say yes. No, I'd been thinking about going to church, and I'm not quite sure whether, if Sue hadn't said this to me at the time, whether I would or wouldn't have got my family to church. But that getting to church changed our lives. I think as we grow up, we get taught to be independent. We get taught to make our own decisions and be responsible for our own decisions. And one of the most difficult things as somebody who wasn't attending church was to be able to hand over ownership of all your decisions in your life to God. And it wasn't a difficult thing to do. It was quite an awkward thing that I saw my life changing. I didn't know how we were going to not get to the beach on Sunday mornings, how we were going to battle with these things. But the day that I went to our first church service at the new church, and there was a preach on basically the crucifixion of Jesus, I was touched by the Holy Spirit. I remember being in tears that day. I remember going to work on the Monday, and one of my suppliers who lives a long way away in Stellenbosch sent me the scriptures, the identical scriptures that had been preached on the Sunday before. And then I realized that God had my number, that it wasn't coincidence, and that this was real. What we learned through going to church was to pray. And obviously with Craig's difficulties and situations we had, we realized that you can't just, these things just don't go away. But what prayer did is gave Craig and our family such strong vices to help us to deal with these anxieties and difficulties, to the extent where Craig has now ended up in a mainstream school from being in a remedial school. Within a couple of weeks ago, within a 3-year period, he's now went off on a rugby tour where he was hosted by a stranger that he's never met before. And I think back to the days where we couldn't get him to school. I used to chase him around the garden trying to get him to school. And I know that if it hadn't been for God in our lives and the prayer, we wouldn't have been where we are today. And I think if I could just say to those people out there that are battling to make that decision, the easiest and the best decision you will ever make is to let God captain your ship. It might seem like it's a difficult thing to do, but the moment you do it, your life becomes far less complicated and a lot easier.